ready? Before I actually move on to part 2, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. 2 things I thought about that I wanted to talk about before we broke and I just forgot. Tying back to the box sets and how powerful box sets can be. And I talk a lot about BookBub. BookBubs are admittedly pretty hard to get. The editorial process is pretty competitive, and you might have to apply like 10 times before they accept you. But just keep trying. I think you can apply once a month or something. And also just to note, they'll only feature the same book once every 6 months. Just so you know. But if you had trouble getting featured on one book in your series on BookBub, box set will increase your chances of them featuring your book. Because that's a much better value to readers, right? They're getting a set of books that you usually charge $9.99 for 99 cents. And so they're more likely to give you that featured deal if it's in a box set. My box set's actually how I hit the USA Today list, so they can be really powerful for that too. Back to kind of the continuous standalones. If you've just written a standalone book, you can totally turn that into a series. It doesn't, like, as long as just the world is the same, right? I mean, it's just, so you really can turn a standalone book into a series of books if you're just a little bit creative with it. Okay, but we can talk about that more later if someone has specific questions. So part number 3, master the must-have elements of a series. So I think the most important part of any series is the characters. I think that and this may just be my preference, but I think especially in series, I think character-driven plots are way more endearing and more effective than plot-driven stories. I think the reason people fall in love with the world of books is because of the characters you create, and they root for those people. And I know kind of like anti-hero stuff is really big, like in television and movies right now. Like think like Breaking Bad, great TV show. He's not especially likable, right? I mean, he's not like a great person. And that works really well in TV. I don't know if it works as well in a book series because people are spending a whole lot more time with those characters. I think people need to be able to root for the people they're reading about and fall in love with those characters. So really spend a lot of time developing your characters, and I just think that's the most important thing in the series. Also, setting is key. This is true for any story, but especially in world building a series. Think about like Hallmark movies. I'm not bashing Hallmark movies because I love them. I watch most all of them every year. But I don't think anyone's going to claim that they're like really great actors in those movies or that you don't know exactly what's going to happen in every single story at the start of the story, right? I mean, they tell the same story 20 ways. But I think the reason people love them so much is they're in the most beautiful little towns, right? With the prettiest houses and the prettiest inns, and the setting of those movies is just so beautiful. And if you can do that in a series, that's incredibly effective. I get emails a lot, people talking about like my descriptions, and that always cracks me up. And it, like, my mother thinks it's the funniest thing ever because she thinks I'm terrible at descriptions, which admittedly I am. Like, I really don't describe that much. I'm not very good at describing what someone's wearing or what the castle looks like or even the landscape. But because the series is set in Scotland, people just fill in the blanks, right? I mean, they just put themselves there, and they see it, whether I wrote it or not. So they'll be like, I loved your description. I just feel like I'm in Scotland. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. I didn't write it, but I'm so glad it's working. And that's the power of setting, right, in your series. People want to be able to sit down and just like know where they're going in their mind into that world and that landscape. Voice. Decide how your stories will be structured. So what I'm talking about here is first person, third person, a variation of both. So in mine, I use both. In all of my books, the main heroine is in first person, and the secondary characters are in third person. Not like in the same paragraph, obviously. There will be like section breaks or chapter breaks between the changes in voice. That works very well for this series. But it would be very weird at this point, 17 books in, if I decided to do a whole book that was all first person or a whole book that was all third person. And the readers may not even consciously realize that I changed something, but they would realize that I changed something in their experience of the book. So you need to kind of, in your first few books in the series, decide how you're doing that and be consistent throughout. Don't decide to do something that's like really challenging and uncomfortable for you in your first few books and then feel like you have to maintain it all the way through a series. Find whatever voice works for you and be consistent. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. Okay, rules. Follow the rules that you develop for your series. And I don't mean that you should sit down and write like a list of rules for your series. I mean, be consistent with what you set up in the first few books. So for example, and I'm using romance because that's what I'm familiar with. If readers can expect, 2 or 3 love scenes in a book, don't put 15 in the next book, or if they expect none, then don't have one that has a whole bunch. Be consistent with what their experience is. If your books are typically, 70,000 words, don't write your next novel 120,000 words, or don't have it to be a whole lot shorter than your previous books. And it's not even a conscious thing, but readers will pick up on those things in the experience of your novel when they're reading it. And so kind of frame that up from the beginning and follow all the way through. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that? The must-have elements of a series. Come on, talk to me. Let's talk. Anything?
So I have, pardon me if I cross the line, but on the number 4, have you found out by inadvertently breaking your own rules that you had rules?
No, I don't think so. I can't think of an example, but I think it's something that I've noticed in other people's reading before, right? Like, if there was a series I really loved, and, well, actually, I can think of an example. I really love Karen Marie Moning. Have any of you read her stuff? She wrote time travel romance for a while, and now she kind of writes fantasy stuff. And I loved the first, 5 books in that series, and then she took a long break and came back, and the next one, the whole layout of it was different, the voice was different, everything about it was just so different that when that book came out, I was so excited to enter that world again, right? That experience that I'd had those first 5 books, and it was just so different that I felt so disconnected from it. It was still a good book, but it was just, I'd looked forward to it for so long, and then it just wasn't the same experience. So I just think that's really important, Yes?
I don't write fiction, but I recently went back and edited for republication a book I wrote in 2012, and I discovered that I had changed the way I presented information between 2012 and 2019. And it's always helpful to go back and reread and relook at what you've done,
Right.
so that you can keep current with yourself and see how you're evolving and changing, and how whatever story it is you're putting together has evolved and changed and stayed consistent.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that's also one helpful thing about doing special editions or adding short stories and stuff, is it gives you an opportunity to revisit those earlier books that you may have kind of lost touch with, or even having them put into audio. You end up having to listen to it, which is an experience, not always a fun one. Yes.
How do you decide which minor characters will become main characters?
Usually it's readers that tell me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they'll email me, or in the Book Babes group a lot, they're like, oh, we love that character, we want more about them, or we want more about, in the first 2 books, there's a little she's kind of the cook, she's one of the castle workers, but she really kind of runs it more than the Laird does, and people loved her, and so I've written some short stories with her that are going to come out in my newsletter and things like that. So readers will tell you if you ask. And that's great. That builds your fan base. If you can ask that on social media, or you can ask that in a reader group, or in your newsletter, you can send that out. There was another thing I was going to talk about. It was a good point too, and it's just gone. What else? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just had an observation, and I'm going to say Linda and Jenny, if y'all have a point on this, please let me know. But with traditional publishing, you do have some rules and regulations that you have to abide by, and you need to know what they are when you are with them. Now, you can get by statting it and saying, I want it that way, if they'll go along with you, but you do have to know those rules and regulations.
Kind of like
Is
with
that, would y'all, am I?
You mean for like a line you're writing for?
The line you're writing for your house, or your editor.
kind of the same thing that I was talking about as far as like voice and heat level and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's the thing too. I mean, you want, and I don't think there's a thing wrong with self-publishing. I think it's one of the best things to happen to writers ever. But I think the more you can make it difficult for readers to distinguish your book from a traditionally published book, the better. So that's one of those things that, like, if you have set rules and you're being consistent, that helps with that a lot. Oh my gosh, yes.
In the series, what's the danger in doing a prequel to the first book in the series?
That's fantastic.
Okay.
One thing I'm actually doing right now is I'm trying to revamp my newsletter and kind of the onboarding sequence for my newsletter, and I mentioned it to someone. Yeah, I think that'd be a fantastic idea. Like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a prequel short story that leads into the first book, but people get it for free if they sign up for my newsletter. So people that are on my newsletter will love it because they're getting a story they haven't heard before. But it can also get new readers onto my email list with a free little story that leads right into the first book. So I think that's great. But you wouldn't have to do it as a free short story. You could just publish it too. And that would work also. That would be a really good perma-free thing. A prequel story leading into the first book. Yes.
It sounds like you use your short stories as marketing, that you really don't market them, that they...
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you could do like, and I've thought about doing this too, like creating like 4 or 5 short stories that go off of one of the books, and then putting those like in a box set and selling them, like a collection of short stories inspired by book 1, right? Or whatever. See, I mean, that's the cool thing though, like you can do so many different things with them. You can use them as a marketing tool, you can sell them. You can, use them as like shorts or serials in KU if Kindle Unlimited is your thing. Like, there's so many different things you could do, and if something doesn't work, you can pull it and try again, or redo it in a different way, which is fantastic. Okay, I'm going to talk about one other thing, and then we can do more questions or whatever. If you really enjoyed this, and series is something you really think you need to work on and you want to develop, I am doing a week-long workshop on series at the West Texas Writers Academy this next June. And it's going to be like way more in depth on everything I talked about here today. Everyone that comes to the class is going to bring 2 ideas for a series. We're going to narrow it down to 1, and by the end of the week, you're going to have your whole series mapped out and ready to start writing. And all of the classes look fantastic this next year. I saw the lineup. They haven't published it yet, but I saw it this last week, and it's really good. So there's the website. You can check that out. Also, my mom, if any of you have been to previous presentations, you've seen her. She's not here today. But she worked for me until just a few months ago. She's fantastic at this stuff. She was my assistant. If I had not had her, I would not be where I'm at. But she has branched off from me and started her own thing and is doing author assistant work. And she's really, really good. She can do graphics. She can do formatting. She can upload stuff. She can help with your newsletter list, whatever. She's available by the hour or by project. Her website is there, and I have some business cards of hers if you're interested. If you have any questions that you think of later or whatever, I'm open to visit with you guys anytime. So you can email me at that address on the screen. And I'll let you write down if you're writing down. But then the next slide has the link where you can download this presentation at. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me what your email is? I can't.
Oh, yes, ma'am. It's bclaire, BCLAIRE at BethanyClaire.com.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. And there's the link where you can download this. And any questions, anything we need to clarify, any questions about self-publishing in general, doesn't even have to be about a series. We've got a little bit of time.
So you mentioned voice. Do you have any way to, any personal way that works that you can double check the voice of a character to make sure that they within character? Does that make sense?
I mean, I have like editors and proofreaders that help check that, but I don't know. The characters usually seem they're just so different. I don't know. I haven't ever really found it to be too much of a problem. They always just kind of take over at some point. I don't know. Does that sound ridiculous?
Okay, the reason I ask is in my last writers group, one of the criticism from the other members was about a certain character, and their concern was you had this character speaking a certain way, and this is just different. You need to change this.
Yeah. I haven't.
I had altered her voice apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Without knowing it.
Yes.
Do you sit down at some point in where you describe your plotting process and create a character and personality profile of your main characters?
I never have. No. I mean, you totally could.
Sure.
But I have not done that. Yeah.
Can you talk more about like your writing schedule? I know you said in the beginning you were really cranking things out. I'm having a hard time. We've been getting one book done right now, so I'm just kind of wondering how you stay focused and were able to do that.
So, granted, I had a very fortunate and lucky situation when I started. For those of you that don't know, I was majoring in elementary education. I had every single thing, like literally every single thing done except my student teaching, and dropped out of college to write full time. And I think the panic was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was this thing of like, if I don't make this work, I have absolutely no backup plan. But because I wasn't going to school, and I wasn't like trying to juggle with other jobs, which I know most people are, right? I mean, they're working full time and they're also trying to write and get this stuff done. So I just set up a schedule and did it every single day. And for the first probably 3 to 4 years, it was about a book every 3 months. So it was like trying to get the first draft of the manuscript done in about 6 weeks or so, and then another 6 weeks like getting it ready and marketing and all of that stuff. I started in July and then released the first 3 in November, but the first one was already about halfway done in July when I actually like started doing it full time. It's different now. I mean, I this past couple years has not been the easiest. I burned out hard and had to kind of like reevaluate how I wanted my business to look and who I wanted to work with. Like I had family, two of my family members employed with me full time. I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. They helped me a ton, but it's just hard, right? It's hard with family. It's hard to keep boundaries. I just kind of wanted my mom to be my mom, and so this past year has kind of been like a whole restructuring of everything, and I've taken on kind of doing everything by myself again, which has slowed me down a bit, but it's also allowed me to kind of fall back in love with it, which was really desperately needed. So, but I don't regret any of that at the beginning. Like, I think it was really important to kind of crank it out at the beginning and to be really strict with myself for a while, just to kind of get a footing. And it allowed me to kind of have this period of burnout that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise if I hadn't hustled for a while. Does that help? Yeah. Yes.
Can you kind of break down for me what percentage, say, of a day or a week do you actually devote to writing versus how much of the time do you devote to marketing?
Okay.
Do you have a breakdown on that?
Yeah, we'll pretend that I'm like in real work mode, which isn't currently, but I mean, typically if I'm in the middle of a book, I'll write for I'll get up early and I'll start at like 5 and I'll write from 5 to 9 or 10. If I don't write first thing, it's not going to happen. happen. Like if I do pretty much anything else but get out of bed and get to the computer, I'm gonna get distracted with, anything. So, but I'll write for 4 or 5 hours, then I'll go brush my teeth and get clothes on and stuff. I really honestly don't spend that much time marketing every day. It's more like answering emails, responding to emails. It's a lot of business stuff. That's one thing I totally underestimated was the amount of bookkeeping there would be. And having my own business with this, it's constant taxes and QuickBooks and so much more of that than I ever expected there to be. I probably don't spend more than an hour a day on marketing, if that. And it totally depends. Like if I'm setting up a promotion or whatever, I'll spend maybe the better part of the day lining up some promotion sites, like applying for a book bug or a free book seat. Or that's a really good one, and that's one that you don't even have to apply for. You can just sign up and pay for if you need a good promotion site.
What was that again?
Free Booksy. It's all one word, FREE, book and an SEY at the end. And they just will show you when the slots are open, and you can just pay for it for a feature, and they're pretty effective. They're kind of expensive, but you don't have to wait to get accepted, which is good. Yes.
That URL is not working.
Oh, well, awesome. Okay, I'll check in a minute. Let's see. Okay. Yes.
Do you think there would be any advantage to you trying to get in with a regular publisher rather than self-publishing, or are you happy where you are?
It would be at this point, they would have to come to me, and it would have to be a freaking ridiculously good offer, honestly. It would be really hard for me to give up the control that I have. I like that so much, being able to discount when I want to, and I just think the likelihood of them making me more money than I'm making myself would be slim at this point. But that's not going to be the case for everyone. And I visited with someone who was doing more children, like a middle grade series. You said, right? That might be more targeted toward a traditional publisher, especially if you want in schools or whatever. So everybody's situation is different, and there's not a right or a wrong thing. If you don't really like the business stuff, and if you don't really if all you want to do is write, I don't know if you should self-publish because it's a whole lot of work outside of the writing. And I kind of enjoy that. I'm not the typical creative. I don't eat, sleep, and breathe writing. If I wasn't making money, I probably wouldn't be writing. So I kind of enjoy the business side of things, but everyone is not like that. So. Yes?
For a real newbie, give me an idea of starting out self-publishing.
Okay. So there are, they're self-publishing. Do you know anything about self-publishing? Have you heard the term before?
I've heard the term.
Okay. So I think for a long time when self-publishing started, a lot of people associated it with vanity publishing, which is quite different. I do not believe it is vanity publishing. I believe it's let's see how hard you can work, and the readers will decide if your book is worthy of being seen or not. But so there are kind of 5 main ebook retailers, and with self-publishing, ebooks are going to be your bread and butter. I think a lot of people get into it thinking that paperbacks and hardbacks are going to be their main sales. It's not. Paperbacks and hardbacks are 5% of my sales, and then audio is 40%, and then the rest is ebooks. So there are 5 main retailers. Amazon is by far the largest. Barnes & Noble has their Nook division. They call it Barnes & Noble Press now. They just changed it. Apple iBooks. Kobo is the biggest ebook retailer in Canada. In lots of other places in the world, honestly, but Canada's their biggest part. And then Google Play. And so basically with self-publishing, you're the publisher, right? So you write the book, you have to find an editor. Do not edit your own book. Find an editor and get it professionally edited. You find a cover designer. You have to do all the things that a traditional publisher would do. You have to do it yourself. and then you upload it. But the advantage of that is you get quite a bit more in royalties. For example, you get 70% if you cross anywhere from $2.99 to $9.99. But there's cost involved. You don't get an advance like you would with a traditional publisher. So there are pros and cons to each thing. And I don't know, it's a big topic, but maybe that's a little bit of an overview. Yes?
You said something about getting a professional cover designer. Any ideas on how to find those?
Just Google. I mean, there are a lot. I can tell you a few right now. DeMonza is the one that has done all of my main series covers. They're very good. I mean, they're pricey, but like I honestly feel like if you're going to pay for something that covers the most, I mean, cover and editing are the two things that it is worth shelling out some money for when you're self-publishing. And also
99 Designs.
99 Designs is one too. There are a lot. I'm drawing a blank, but you could just Google book cover designers and things would come up. Yes.
I did have one thing, because I ran into this self-publishing, paying for an editor. You know, there's development, line editors, copy editors. Be sure you know what you're getting and what you expect them to do.
Yeah.
Because if you think you're getting a copy editor and they just want to, I don't know, line edit, or when they're not giving you what you think you're paying for, you're gonna end up having to pay somebody else to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. And it's you can audition editors too. You know, like you can totally find like 3 or 4 editors that you think you want to work with, and ask them if they can do a sample piece for you. And my experience has been most of them are willing to do that. I mean, they're not going to do like a huge section, but they'll do a handful of pages, so you can kind of see how they work and if there's someone you could work with. I mean, because everyone's kind of, I mean, that's going to be an important relationship, and everyone's kind of different with that.
I just want to say, all the people in this room are your best resources.
Yes.
We have publishers in this room, we have editors. This group will help you on your journey more than anybody else. So ask the person next to you, who edits your work? Where do you publish? This is your, I mean, there are tons of information just in this room that's everybody in here, So get their business card, check their website. Anyway, that's where I've learned most everything I do is just from asking y'all.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've got someone right here that has her own business and is to do all of what you're talking about right here in this room. Not me.
Could you please share with us how did you get prepared to be such a good writer? Did you read extensively? What books did you read? What's your major? And did you ever read any Chinese novels? I mean, the translated version by the English version translated by some American translators.
I don't think I have, but I'm a huge reader, and always have been my whole life. A huge fiction reader. Like I was like a kid that like loved AR time. I really, I don't know if is that a thing still? Do people do accelerated reading still? Writing was always a thing that I was good at in school, like math test, science, not my strong suit. But if I got like an essay for homework, I was excited about that because I could do that. It was always a thing that was easiest for me. And then my major was elementary. Well, my major was a lot of things. I changed my major like 6 times. But in the end, it was elementary education. But writing still, it was like what I did kind of to keep sane in college, because college was hard for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really fit in college. Like I think I was born like 45 years old or something. Like college is not the funnest thing for me. But so I'd write in my free time, and it was kind of my outlet. And the more I did it, the more I was like, I substitute teached for a couple of years while I was going to school, and I'd be sitting there like on any break or lunch, like writing. And then the kids would come in, and I'm like, oh. And so if that was my reaction to a room full of kids, I probably didn't need to teach. So I started trying to figure out, how to pursue the writing stuff. But I think reading fiction is the best thing you could possibly do to become a better writer. I think you have to read to be a good writer, don't you think?
Absolutely. And read in your genre extensively.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
With the way that writers like you have changed the whole world and face of publishing, do you foresee a time when a self-published author will win a Pulitzer or Nobel Prize in Literature?
Sure, why not? I mean, I think you're going to see more and more of it all the time. Like, I don't think there's any coming back from it. I think writers have realized how much power it gives them, and I think we're getting smarter all the time.
Didn't a self-published indie author win a Rita this year?
Yes, and
that's huge.
Is it what?
I mean,
What would you say?
a Rita, which is kind of like,
We're indie authors. An indie author won a Rita, Romance Writers of America.
Yeah.
Huge award.
I mean, there are always going to be poor examples of people that really aren't self-publishing correctly, but there are also traditional books that get published that really shouldn't have been published either. So you can say that for anything. But I would also say, like, don't be so afraid that you're going to screw up that you don't start. It's like not a big deal. Things change so fast. People move on so fastly. They're not going to remember this mistake you made 3 years ago. And the cool thing about self-publishing is you can always just take it down and try again. Like if it doesn't work one way, you can take it down, get a new cover, do whatever, put it back up. Anything else? Okay. I think I'm gonna close it up. Was it too short? Is it okay?
No.